topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Alise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program. Great to have you back. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez, joining you live from Dallas, home base for me. If we've not met yet, you don't know me. I'm a management consultant and organizational logotherapist specializing in activating meaning and purpose. My team and I help companies to detect and articulate their purpose, to thread it through their culture and operations. We work with forward-reaching organizations to develop inspirational leaders who create cultures where people actually want to come to work and do their best. And we provide programs that enable individual team members and leaders to discover and unleash their passion and purpose at work to catalyze fulfillment, engagement, and productivity. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at alisecortez.com. Also, if you like the content of the show, you may be interested in my next book coming out in March of 2023. It's called The Great Revitalization: How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. You can pre-order your copy at bookshop.org or barnesandnoble.com. Now let's get into today's program. With us is Jaime Konzelman. She is a motivational speaker and an executive coach with 20 plus years of experience selling complex services and leading high-performing global teams for Fortune 500 companies. She is on a mission to help leaders unleash their potential and awaken their dreams, one conversation and one adventure at a time. She's the proud author of her debut memoir, Dealmaker, Finding Myself Being Behind Closed Doors of America's Greatest Strip Clubs. We'll be talking about her remarkable journey through life to date and how she's taken everything she's learned along the way to help liberate the human spirit. Jaime, welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thank you so much. How wonderful to be here.
I'm really excited to have you. As we've talked before, one of the things that is so great about getting to host the show 7.5 years in, you are episode 411, is I have met some remarkable human beings, present company included. And I want to start by just celebrating you, Jaime, in that I really see you and how you've navigated the planet so far as very remarkable. You are, I would say that you are an intense human being that is really out to savor the depth and marrow of life. And in so doing, I think you've learned a lot along the way about how to help others do the same. And I really want to celebrate that.
Well, thank you. Really, really big words. I wanted to take that in.
Awesome. Great. I'm glad you received them as intended. So what I want to do for our listeners and viewers who don't really understand your journey yet the way that I do is I want you to introduce yourself and talk just really about, a little bit about your upbringing, because that's part of what makes you you, is how you had to navigate your upbringing. I want you to talk about your early life working. And then I want you to talk about how it is that you transitioned into corporate America. And then we'll take it from there, if you would, please.
Sure. So you said a lot, so I'll unpack that, right? And you mentioned some of it in my bio, right? So I lead a sales team for a Fortune 500 company in IT services, right? I'm also executive coach. But as you alluded to, my career path has been, I'd say, pretty non-traditional, right? As the tagline of my book says, I started my career on stage behind the closed doors of America's greatest strip clubs. So I wasn't just a dancer. That intensity that you acknowledge me for means I kind of go all in. So I didn't just dance, but I hooked up with a mentor who was North America's most published centerfold. And she taught me how to sort of tour the adult circuit. And I built a $250,000 a year business for myself when I was 19 as an adult entertainer.
It's remarkable, Jaime.
Well, I've had lots of mentors, lots of angels along the way. And I truly believe that the lessons that I learned in that space of learning how to sell services, whether it was, money for my time or promotional items, anything from like a golf t-shirt to a golf towel with my name on it, was really the foundation of what helped me succeed in corporate America doing services sales for a living.
Mm-hmm. So I want to unpack a couple things that you said there. First, somehow you had the amazing good sense to find yourself a mentor. Let's just crack on that for just a second, right? I don't know anybody, Jaime, who really realizes their potential without help from mentors and coaches and people that believe more in them than they believe in themselves and who hold them accountable and say, no, you can do and be more. That you somehow had the good sense at that age to know you wanted a mentor, went off and found and recruited one, and a pretty darn amazing one, right, is incredible, Jaime.
Thank you. I never really thought of it in that sense. It was just the instinct that if you want to get where someplace else in life, find somebody who's been there before and see if you can help them and learn from them in the process. And so it was just part of my, I guess, DNA from, little tidbits from my dad about never being afraid to ask for help or never stop learning that made that foundation.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I want to showcase because it will help also set the foundation for really who you are and how it is that you do the work that you do in coaching and as well as leading teams. You say that you as a younger child were you say directly you were fat. That's how you describe yourself. and yet you go from this person who hasn't really done much to you start running 5Ks, and within 18 months you're doing Ironmans. So that's back to the intensity. So tell us a little bit about what was it like for you to experience this feeling like you were fat? And then how did you get into running and how did you go into Ironmans?
Sure. I mean, it was a long journey. And in fairness, right, I was probably no different than any other 9-year-old roly-poly kid, right, where, the clothes are a little tight and your older siblings tease you. But that teasing made me have, from a very early age, right, an acute knowledge of my body that turned into what I call gym rat, right? Get up, work out, get up, work out. But it really wasn't until I was in my 30s and early 30s, I was 29 years old, had gone through a bad breakup, as you do, and made a list of all the things in life that I had never done because I realized I put my career and other people first. And it sounds like a simple exercise, but to sit in what do I want to do if I could do anything and stare at a blank page was pretty, not just overwhelming, but also just a lot of emotions, right? And at the time, I cracked a glass of champagne, decided to celebrate it, and made my little list. And the next day when I looked at that list, number 3 was be an athlete. And I thought, oh my goodness, if I am still harboring athlete dreams, because the roly-poly kid got cut from every sport I ever tried at 10, 12, 14, I got to do something about that. And so, going back to my DNA of always finding somebody who's done what I want to do, I joined a run club. And in honesty, I was scared to death, which seems very silly now in hindsight, but I had never done a sport, right? And so to show up at a run club where people have all these spandex and lycras and had likely been doing it all their life was petrifying. But I had my little list and I was going to do it. And I got very lucky that the club I showed up to, this woman was very clear that her purpose is helping people find the inner athlete. And in her case, endurance athlete within them, right? And so talk about the universe placing people where they need to be. I mean, she looked at me day one and said, I will be in your life as little or as much as you want. And of course, that spoke to my 5-year-old who never made the track team, and running a 5K turned into a triathlon. And by the following year, Ironman.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's put this into perspective for listeners and viewers that don't know what an Ironman is. My ex-husband did half Ironmans and one full Ironman. It's really something to behold. So listeners and viewers, and you correct me where I get this wrong. Sure. For a full Ironman, what you do is you start with a 2-mile swim, right? 2-mile swim, 2.1 miles of swimming. Then you follow that up with 100 and how many miles on the bike? 113 miles on the bike. Yep. And then you finish that crisp thing up with a marathon, which is 26.2 miles. Yeah. Okay. So listeners and viewers, this is what an Ironman is. Okay. That is not for the faint of heart. It is an intense thing. I will just quickly say a quick side story. I know when my ex-husband did his first half Ironman, people are coming out of the sea. They're gently walking over the pebbles, to try to go into the bike station, and everybody's gently doing this. And all of a sudden there's like 3 people go into the water to help this guy out of the water. I'm like, how come this guy gets help out of the water? This is hard for everybody else. And they go to pick him up and he has no legs. I'm like, that would explain it. So they bring him to the bike area, put him on a bike. And I'm telling my husband about this later on. He goes, I didn't see that guy. I said, oh, no. He finished way ahead of you.
That is awesome.
It wasn't trying to be mean, but it was true, right?
Yeah.
So what I want to put forth here, Jaime, about my experience of witnessing the Ironmans, I never participated in them, is that it's such a beautiful rendition of the possibilities of a motivated human spirit. It is beautiful. I've seen people with prosthetic arms and legs doing a full Ironman. Every time that I've ever witnessed it, it moves me to tears.
Same. I cry every time, even when I see the ads on TV.
Right. And so I want our listeners and viewers to understand this is who they're listening to. A person who can go from, feeling like you're not an athlete at all to multiple Ironman. How many Ironmans have you done?
I have done 3 fulls and 9 halves.
Underachiever. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to hear a little bit about the journey of, when did you finish your strip club career, your professional entertainer career? When did you finish that? And how did you transition into the sales and corporate world?
Sure. It was about 25 years ago, give or take, right? I was dancing in a club in New York City, pretty famous, across from the David Letterman show. And
wow.
I was reading a book. I think it was Dale Carnegie's Making Friends and Influencing People. And that was actually the first time that I read crystallized in a book, like Finding Mentors. I hadn't realized that's what I was doing, right? I just thought I was finding friends to help me. And I realized, like, in one of those kind of aha moments, that the allure of the fast cash had been disappearing. And so if I was I had to go to work that night because I think it was a holiday. And in that world, if you don't show up to work, they fine you. So if I didn't go to work that night, there's like $1,000 fine. And as I was like walking downstairs to this basement, I'm thinking, well, and I just, finished reading this book on the subway, thinking, well, if I have to be here and it's not about the money, what would it be about? And I was like, oh my God, how lucky am I? This is New York City. There are so many self-made people. Like, I could maybe find a mentor here. And so I went.
Of course you thought that.
And I did. And that night I went into work and talked to regulars and talked to, new people and said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want a business career, right? Like, I want a new goal. And I want some mentors. And a couple of people that night said, all right, great. Come to the office. We'll interview you. And I never danced again.
Wow. Okay. So there's one other thing that I want to also talk about, because I think it's really critical about your story and so illustrative of how uniquely you navigate things. And this came up when you and I spoke in the phone conversation in preparation for the show. You told me how much you learned from, your clientele, how much you learned about business and just how, companies work by the people that you were interacting with and serving. I think that's incredible, Jaime.
Thank you. I mean, 100%, right? I mean, there's, whether you've been to one of those places or not, right? There's all the stereotypes in movies that it's about sex and it's about bodies. And I've always believed it was about connection. Somebody very early in my dancing career said, if you can figure out why somebody walks through the door, right, they'll be your customer for life. And a loyal customer in that world is just as important as a loyal customer anywhere else, right? It makes or breaks the business. And so my loyal customers are largely businessmen. And so we would sit and talk for hours. And it was sort of like this petri dish because it was a safe place. I could voice to these semi-strangers anything that I typically would only put in my journals because I didn't have very strong verbal communication skills at that stage of my life. And then what I would get back was also a lot of authentic conversation, right? Mentoring, business nuggets. I mean, many people said, you're not going to be here for long. You're a business person. Well, at 19, business sounded boring. I just liked making money, right? And so, didn't realize that foundation that was being created and still at times think back to some of those lessons.
So, here it is here. And this is where everything that we do in life, we can start to borrow from and leverage and lean on for what we do next. Nothing is lost.
That's right.
So what you just said there, right? Learning, why do they walk through the door? What do they want? A lot of it is probably connection and being able to talk with somebody else. So now you take that incredible experience and you bring it into the world of sales and you're uber successful there. Right? So it's because it's the same skill set.
It is. And we used to joke that not to drink too much, because the more you drink, the more you talk, and the customers would be more loyal if you actually ask more questions and were quiet, right? We joke and say, right, 2 ears, 1 mouth. And so actually, I had a great conversation with a mentor of mine yesterday, and she was asking me, she said, when did you start practicing listening? I noticed you're a great listener. I said, well, at 18, when I was a dancer, right? Like the owner of the club said, figure out why they come. And if I wanted to figure it out, I had to ask a lot of questions and then just be quiet and listen. And so it very early on taught me the power of giving people that space and then listening, but not listening to talk, right? Listening to excavate deeper meaning from what's behind their words.
And don't we use that beautifully in the world of sales? Isn't that exactly what we do in the world of sales? People don't know that. If you're, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not in the world of sales, you think sales is about talking at people. That's the last thing it's about, right? And so anyway, I just think that is just so incredible. And then you also found your way into really high ticket, high value sales. This is not like you're just selling, whatever copiers or, whatever kind of equipment. These are high ticket things that you sell. How did you land into that?
Also a journey. I mean, from 2007 to 2011, I was laid off from the corporate world 4 times. So I didn't go back to college until a little bit later in life, my late 20s. And when I came out, it was the start of the worst recession since the Great Depression, prior to COVID, right? And so each time I got a new job, 6 months later, first in, first out, I got laid off. And what could seem tragic or awful for people, because I'm not afraid to start over and I have that sales skill, each time I was able to leverage it into a bigger and better opportunity defined by traditional business metrics, right? Bigger comp package, bigger company. And in the sales world, for me, that meant learning how to move up the value chain, right? And so it wasn't really until I got into the IT services about 12 or 14 years ago where I learned, oh my goodness, right? Like selling is selling. And here the deals can be not just $5 million or $10 million. But as I learned how to sell much more complex solutions to bigger and bigger companies, learned how to be a deal maker and orchestrate $100 million deals, $500 million deals.
It's just
same foundational skill set, right? Building your knowledge base and then maturing your application of those same skills that made me successful as a dancer.
Mm-hmm. So happy to know you, Jaime. You are a breath of fresh air in all ways. Let's grab our first break. You're welcome. I'm Alise Cortez, your host. We've been on the air with Jaime Konzelman, who's a motivational speaker and executive coach. We've been talking a bit about her early journey and how she got to where she is today. What's that foundation? After the break, we're going to start talking about a few of the things that she really focuses on teaching leaders and the people that she coaches. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Alise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Alise to speak to your organization, please visit her at alisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Alise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Alise, send an email to Alise, A-L-I-S-E, at alisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us, and welcome back to the program. Before we get back into it, I want to take a moment to invite you to check out my first book that I wrote. It's called Purpose Ignited, and I really wrote the book to awaken readers to their passion and purpose and start them down the path of becoming an inspirational leader. And that's the content that I use in my leadership program. So I hope you'll check it out. If you're just now joining us today, my guest is Jaime Konzelman. She's a motivational speaker and executive coach who is on a mission to help leaders unleash their potential and awaken their dreams, one conversation and one adventure at a time. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. So for this next segment, Jaime, what I wanted to do is I wanted to really dive into just some of the things that are really foundational for you and how you do your work and how you teach and coach from. And one of them is authenticity. And I don't just mean standard authenticity. I call your brand radical authenticity. That's how it occurs for me. And I love that. It's so accessible. And one of the things I know, Jaime, is that people crave being known and understood on a level that they feel special. And they crave knowing their leaders and knowing who they are and what matters to them. So I want to hear a bit more about why you think authenticity is so important and really how it is that you're helping to teach people that you're working with about authenticity.
Awesome. Sounds like a super simple question, right? But such a nuanced way that you can look at it. And so one of the things and why I think authenticity is so important is I think we're in a time where people are craving it, right?
Agreed.
People, you may not have a word for it, but people can sense and feel when you're being fake. And so I truly believe because of taking a different path and learning how to be true to myself, that has been one of my superpowers in sales. And it's taken me a long time to see that. And so the more I realized that from myself, the more I started to see, well, if that's my superpower, maybe other people have that too, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's not about being something different or taking these lists of qualities that we've idealized over time that we say this is a leader. It's more about having that courage to be who you are, because in doing so, you give others permission to do the same. And to me, that's where the real power in business is, and life.
And so I'm going to share with you one of my major pet peeves. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is you, I'm just going to give it to you straight. I hate the whole canned sales approach. I hate sales scripts. I hate them. You are not going to get my business if you come at me that way. So I want the authenticity. I want you to stumble through and say, I'm not really sure I know exactly how to describe this, but here's why I like it, right? Whatever. And I'm a sucker for that. And so when you think about, what makes us distinctive, one of the things, as somebody who does a radio show, I love Terry Gross on NPR. I love how she interviews people. And Terry Gross has a very distinctive lisp. You may call it actually a speech impediment. It's a lisp. And it's distinctive and beautiful and gorgeous and uniquely hers. She can say 2 words and it's her speaking, right? To me, that's what authenticity is about as well. It's sticky. It's magnetic.
I love that.
Yeah. So how do you teach leaders about authenticity? How do you, I got to believe that you meet people who think they're being very authentic and you recognize that, you've got a long way to go here.
Absolutely. Right. And it's also not I don't believe in giving somebody my definition, right? In terms of helping empower leaders to be authentic as a coach, right? It's giving them tools. As a leader of leaders, it's modeling for them, but also having the courage to have hard conversations and giving people the grace to bow out from something they've said or a way of being that no longer serves them. And I think that's something that's often missing, whether it's in business or personal life, right? It can be so easy to get attached to, right, that right-wrong game. You said this and he said that. When what if, right, we're all dynamically trying our best in any given moment. And just because somebody does something and they think it's authentic and I think it's not my place to say it, but I can invite them to try again. And that's a very different context to operate from, whether it be in conversation with team members or colleagues or even clients.
Invite them to try again. That is delightful, Jaime. The other thing that you talked about in some of our other conversations is you talked about how authenticity can lead to psychological safety.
100%.
And we know clearly now, Jaime, after the pandemic, what happened was we got very clear about the importance of mental health and well-being. Yep. And people are not willing to tolerate toxicity. They're not willing to, they're just not. That's part of what drove the Great Resignation so deeply. Yep. So would you say a bit more about how authenticity leads to psychological safety? Sure.
There's the plain human element, right? Take the neuroscience and the psychology out of it, right? I'm not a doctor, Alise. But what I can speak to is that feeling of knowing it's okay to make a mistake, right? Sharing our stories when they are different and modeling behavior so that people have permission to do the same. And I use that expression a lot because it's something I'm still growing into, right? I mean, 3 years ago, I didn't tell anybody about my books, right? I've had 3 books written and not published. And it was the gift of becoming a coach and then becoming a trainer in my previous organization, mostly with young new career starters, and watching them struggle in this corporate environment and nobody being real with them, that I realized it was time to grow up and talk my talk and share my story, right? And so doing that with them made me realize this barrier personally that I had between, corporate successful sales exec, right, that was buttoned up and had all of this stuff, and then this work I did sort of as a side hustle or a passion project of coaching and training and helping other people. Well, there was a place in the corporate setting, and I never would have seen that if I had not started to find my brave or feel responsible to create this environment of safety for other people. And so while I was doing that for them, it also created a space where it up-leveled who I am as a leader and gave me a safe place to practice really just boldly or radically, to borrow your word, just being myself.
Mm-hmm. I love that, being elevated like that. That's so beautiful that by being authentic and true to yourself, that you actually elevate yourself on other people in the process. I think that's so beautiful and so profound. And if that weren't good enough, you also say that authenticity has a relationship with creativity and innovation. How so?
It does.
Tell me, I want to hear this. That sounds great to me. I'm listening.
Sure. Well, I think about it. Gosh, I wish I could remember. There's like a Greek poem that Elizabeth Gilbert talks about, right? That we are a creative, right? Or this creative is this being. And I think in a similar vein to way, leadership has been defined in maybe old patriarchal ways, right? Or these separation of emotion and heart and leadership, and all of this is starting to come together in this holistic way. When you are true to yourself, right? Authentic, and you're comfortable in your own skin, I believe energetically, like our energy level rises, and through the process, you naturally become more creative, right? It's like popcorn, right? If the frying pan is scalding and you throw in the oil and then you throw in the popcorn, it just burns, right? But if you follow the natural process and slowly heat the oil and throw in all the kernels, they all kind of start to pop on their own time because they get to do it on their own terms. And I think human beings and creativity is like that. Authenticity is the conduit to allowing that creativity to move through us.
That is gorgeous, Jamie. Love the whole popcorn analogy too. That's fascinating. It strikes me as you were speaking that and this is something that I teach when I'm teaching leadership as well as management, and that is to go looking for what's special and different about your people, and help them see that, help them and share it through your eyes, the magic and wonder of what's special and different about them. When you do that, then the popcorn really has a chance to get in that pan and start dancing, right? Oh, you actually like this about me? Well, this is kind of what I saw in the last meeting. This is how I think we can go about the strategy. This is what it looks like from my view, right? And so to me, that's also part of the relationship between authenticity and creativity, is if we can be authentic with each other, and not just authentic, but celebrate that, right?
Yes.
And be enamored with it and just be jazzed about that. You give a space for people, to use your term, to elevate themselves, to own more of their full human being, and deliver and create and offer from that space. And that's powerful.
100%. And I want to double click on something you said very early on. You used the word believer in your initial setup. And I believe our job as leaders is to be the believers for our teams, for other people. And so I love the way you said it, right? Is helping them see something that's great about themselves that they don't even know that's great, right? It's just like a coach can help you get access to your blind spots, and through that you grow. When you are a leader and you can hold up the mirror and let somebody know, hey, that's pretty special, don't hide that anymore, then it elevates everybody, right?
It really does. And we have to thank the Coveys here really quick. I've had two of the Covey, there's 9 Covey children, 2 of them have been on the show. Stephen and Mark Covey, thank you. You as well as your father talk about, they talk about leadership, inspirational leadership, communicating worth and potential so strongly to someone that they are compelled to realize what has been said. Something like that. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
That's inspirational leadership. And you do that, you find a way to communicate that in a way that's so compelling for that person, they can't resist reaching for that and making it happen.
That's right.
Right?
You're calling forth them into being in the way that you see them.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what leadership is, ladies and gentlemen. That's how I define leadership too. And that's the world I want you to come with Jamie and I in, because it's a pretty fantastic place to be, we think. So
absolutely.
Now, the other thing that you also shared with me is that you becoming a certified coach has impacted your corporate sales career. I can't be super surprised by that, but I do want to know how.
Oh, well, I mean, coaching school is a year, whatever it was, 9 months, a year of just tools is the way I look at that. And then when you take those tools and you apply them in the corporate setting, right? I was still an individual contributor, deal maker, doing these very large, complex deals. It gave me new tools in the toolkit for communication, right? For inspiring, for guiding others, for elevating the conversation. And so it helped me sell bigger deals faster, shorten the timeline, and at the same time, cut through a lot of the noise, for lack of a better term, in corporation, because I could look through the lens of a coach and see some of those struggles that were roadblocks in different ways, and then navigate them more quickly and more adeptly.
Yeah, as I said at the beginning of this, I really just don't think anybody gets where they really want to go in life without a coach, without a mentor, somebody just really helping them to reach and to catalyze that. So I can totally see how your work in coaching comes over to your sales career. What's also interesting to me, though, you also talk about how you've been burnt out for years, on the minutia of things. So how did your coaching help you get past the burnout stuff?
Well, it was an organic path just to happen, right? I shared earlier that there were two very distinct sides of me, right? Konzelman, corporate deal maker, and then passion and coach and helping people with life purpose. But because they were so separate, I couldn't figure out what was next, right? Great idea, go hang out the shingle as a life coach. Not so realistic when my wife and I had just bought a, dream home with $1 million mortgage, right? It's a little,
there's that.
The corporate American dream, right? And so they were these two separate worlds I'd been dancing in for a long time. And the corporation eventually gave me, we created this space where they said, well, we'll help you become a coach. Just keep doing your deals, right? So then I was doing both of them in the same place, but they were still very, very separate. And then over time, I was just doing more and more internal coaching simply because it fed me and it allowed me to stay in that machine of being a deal maker a little bit longer. And then I don't remember exactly how it transpired, but we had a team that was struggling, the inside sales team. And the leader of that said to me, well, I know you're a coach. Are you a trainer too? And I said, well, I do leadership training. I've never done sales training. And she said, well, could you help train my team? And I thought, absolutely. How fun is that? Right. And I just started making trainings one of the gifts that being in sales my whole career has given me is that if there is a program, they put you through it, right? From Covey to Challenger, you name it, right? I've done thousands and thousands of hours of training. And so I was able to just think through what has made the biggest impact on my career, whether it be in sales or in leadership or even in personal development, because I truly believe who you are is how you lead.
Yes.
So if I could package that all up, and because it was inside sales, which means it's a very young group of new starters, they're hungry to learn and they're eager. So they would do anything really, right? And so we just started running them through slides and doing trainings. And I don't remember if it was 3 months or 6 months, but as different leaders started leading, these people that I'd been training and coaching just got rolled underneath me. And all of a sudden I was their sales manager. And it might seem very organic, and it was very organic, but I've been asked to be a sales manager probably more times than I can count. And I had all of these ideas about what I thought it was. I don't want to chase people down for their deals. I don't want to look at their systems and their expense reports. I just want to sell. But because it was this back door of helping and coaching and training, and it was so organic in that it just kept growing, and then helping even people more senior than me, but help them get their deals done faster, because it was this helping lens, I got to show up and do what I was most passionate about in this corporate setting, and then not walk away from 25 years of sales. And so it was really the biggest gift of my career. And I'm only 18 months out of that and leaning into leading large teams and helping sellers and other executives in the corporate setting, but as a coach and a trainer.
So I want to just quickly say what couple of things out of that. One is that somebody had the good sense to, tell you, wow, you do coaching. Could you help develop the team? So that was brilliant on their part. They saw potential in you. And if more sales teams actually grew that way versus they put the person who's the top producer in charge, they're not doing it for the helping lens. They don't know how to help. That's not what they're doing it for. And they fail miserably. Yeah. That approach, that organic approach, man, that sounds like a great way to do it to me. So
it's been pretty awesome. I feel very, very lucky.
Sales professionals out there, take note. All right, let's grab our last break here. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. We've been on the air with Jaime Konzelman, who is a motivational speaker and executive coach. We've been talking a bit about a few of the pearls that she likes to be able to use as she coaches. After the break, we're going to get more into how it is that she helps others and herself light their fire. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Alise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Alise to speak to your organization, please visit her at alisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Alise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Alise, send an email to Alise, A-L-I-S-E, at alisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us, and welcome back to Working on Purpose. One other bit of news that I want to share with you before we get back into talking with Jaime is my anthology that I've been working on for a while is now out and about. It's called Passionately Striving and Why. That is a collection of 25 stories from women around the world that I handpicked from Australia to Zambia, who share their very intimate story of how they discovered their purpose and are now serving from it. So I hope you'll check that out as well. It's meant to be inspirational and educational. Come along with us. If you are just joining us today, my guest is Jaime Konzelman. She's a motivational speaker and executive coach who's on a mission to help leaders unleash their potential and awaken their dreams, one conversation and one adventure at a time. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. So I misspoke. You don't talk about lighting your fire, you talk about finding your fire, which is really great because I love the idea of just finding. That means it's there somewhere. It's a matter of finding it. So I want to talk a little bit about the phrase that you use. I want to hear you, generate it as you have been doing before. Finding your fire. What does that mean to you?
Sure. And I can tell you where it came from, right? I did that first Ironman and I crossed the finish line and I said, I want more of that, right?
Please, more of that, please. Yeah.
More of that, please. Not just the endorphin rush, but that something that was so big that I never imagined possible in my life. I just wanted to be an athlete, right? Which could be anything, could be running. So to do a race of that magnitude and fulfill that internal childhood dream, the intrinsic feeling of that was the fire, right? And I hadn't realized prior to that how long I'd been going through life, just going through the motions, right? It's so easy to get stuck down in jobs and responsibilities that you're not even realizing that you're not inspired because it's just everyday living. And then to go to the opposite of that Ironman, I crossed that finish line. I said, I'm going to find my life purpose. And very Jaime Konzelman way, there was this very specific definition about it, right? Maybe even a little rigid, right? It was going to be my passions, my purpose, and a way to serve others in my career. And finding my fire was sort of the catch-all that meant, and that's how it was defined, right?
Okay. This is beautiful. Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you.
Okay, so a couple of things. So first, from my vantage point, what I've learned and studied is purpose is always about serving other people. So I love that that's in there. I shared a stage with a woman. We were speaking at a conference in September of 2021, and she belted out to the room, "My purpose is to double my income." I went, "That's not purpose. That's a goal. Purpose is about serving other people. It's not about what you get out of the deal." So I think you hit on something, and purpose energizes it innervates. That's why the passion piece is really important. So I love this idea of finding your fire. And so, part of the reason that I wrote Purpose Ignited, Jaime, is because I'd be out speaking to audiences and I'd ask them, "What are you passionate about?" And I'd watch them listen to the question. And then they realized they don't have an answer to the question.
They don't know.
They don't know. They literally do not know what they're passionate about. They are walking through life dead. That's why I wrote Purpose Ignited. So I love what you're up to. We do need that reawakening. And then what I want to say next, and then I want you to cue it up if you would, in the same way that you have been. From my vantage point, Jaime, I really do believe that work is the sandbox of life. It's not a four-letter word, something that we have to do. This is the place where we realize our potential. It's the place where we really discover who we really can be. And yet so many companies get it wrong because they're not going about it that way. So I love the idea of how you help people find their fire across their life and through their work. Can you say more about how it is that you do that? And if you have an example even.
Sure. And so, that Ironman journey was about 18 months. And so I figured now that I knew the formula, well, then I would find my life purpose in another 6, right? Seemed reasonable.
Of course.
It was more like a decade and then some of that internal excavation. And so
I love that internal excavation. I'm writing that down. Go ahead.
Yeah, you gotta dig and you've got to give yourself permission to play. And so sometimes I think when we take the long road or a hard road in life, part of the beauty of in that service umbrella or lens, if you will, is getting to shortcut that for other people. And so I'm sure there's an infinite number of ways that people can find their fire. I coach from the place of here's kind of a 4-step process that worked for me. Now, just because it's a 4-step process doesn't mean it's simple. It doesn't mean it's really fast. But if you follow these pillars and get curious about each one of them and do some of the work, you will undoubtedly have brilliant results throughout the process.
Yes. And that is part of what I do with my coaching too. And it's just, it's so amazing, right? To see people come back alive again, right in front of you. Right. And so, one of the things that you also said was, you talk about finding zest. These are all words that I use, Jamie. This is why, you and I could finish each other's sentences and such, right? I'm about zest. I mean, that's why I use the word gusto, by the way, because it means something in the languages that I speak, English, Spanish, and Portuguese, and people readily identify with it. So helping people find that zest again. And what I really appreciate is I see more and more companies, and I'm helping companies do this through the culture work that I do. Help your employees find their passion anywhere in their lives, not just at work. Why? Because that passionate person comes to work and does a better job. It's much more interesting to be around and magnetic to be around for everybody. Everybody wins when people are finding their passion.
Absolutely.
Right? So what are a few, besides Ironman competitions, what are a few things that you're passionate about, my dear?
Oh, I'm a big dog lover. We have 4 now. It was 3.
And your bio says 3. There was an acquisition lately, apparently, an adoption.
I think it's a foster fail is what they call it. And so, you may or may not know, right? But our shelters are in crisis. 26 million households in the U.S. adopted a pet during COVID, and which is about 500% increase from an average year. And so the impact is about 20% of those animals end up in animal shelters. And so I've been going to the animal shelter just to walk and field trip dogs and give them a little bit of respite. And there was a big boy named Happy who was on the youth list because, quite frankly, they're just overcrowded and they're out of time. He's happy, he's healthy, he's young, and I fell in love with him. And I called my wife, Janet, and said, it's his last day. And she said, save him. We will find him a home. And 3 weeks into this, she has claimed him as her own.
Not going anywhere.
And so I've been tasked to contact the shelter and say, what do we do now so he can be a permanent member of our family? Because he has, he's won us over and he belongs.
That's so beautiful. So listeners and viewers, I want to echo something from a logotherapy vantage point, because that's my space and jam. So if we look at logotherapy, we know that we have 3 sources of meaning available to us anytime, anywhere. And one of them is there are creations, what we give of ourselves to the world. I call that passion. And the reason this is so important is because when people I hear couples complaining, well, you're always moving things around in the house. You're always cooking something. Why? Well, those things they're passionate about those things. That's what enlivens them. Don't complain about that. That's what enlivens them. Find a way to be able to utilize that, or get the side benefit of the fact that they're enlivened from exercising that passion. So I just wanted to echo the importance of the passion piece. So it's just so critical.
It is. There's somebody once told me there's an expression from ancient Greece that when people died, they didn't say, what do you put on your tombstone? They would say, what were her passions, right? As a way to honor that person when they're no longer here. And I've always loved that because I think we underestimate the power of passion in our lives.
To that end, Jamie, when I meet new people, especially living in Texas, I stopped saying, what do you do when I meet people? I ask people, what do you pour yourself into? Ooh. And they might say their work, but then people start talking about their gardening. People talk about the great, souffle that they make every Sunday. And then I learn all kinds of things about these people. So if you ask them what they pour themselves into, what you're asking about is their passion. And I love that. So
wonderful, beautiful phrasing.
Thank you. I love it. I just love that. It just opens something magical every time. So I want to also now, we have just a few minutes left on the show. I really want to applaud that you've published your memoir.
Thank you.
And I think that, there's so much to learn. I have a memoir coming out about my parents passing. They passed 28 days apart. It's coming out in December. It's called Coloring Life. But it's not nearly, I do say a lot about myself, but I love the idea that you really have a memoir about your life's journey.
That's my first one.
I think that is just brilliant. It's delightful. And I know it's being extremely well received. So if you could just share a little bit about what finally got you to publish that.
It was an integrity check. I woke up one day and thought, how can I be in integrity with my team, with people I coach, with friends, when I'm saying, yeah, there's no shame in your path. You have to be true to yourself. And yet I was hiding that part of my life away like a secret, like a shameful secret. And I don't feel that way about it. And so it was by far the most frightening thing I've ever done in my life. But I realized I had to be ready to walk through that experience to be who I am and to be in integrity with my beliefs.
Mm-hmm. What I also want to call out, Jamie, is that, when you're the one that owns the message, there's a lot more control if you're the first person that's actually sharing it versus somebody else is now putting the message out there. So there's that too, of that, having that, you used the word brave earlier on, having the bravery to be able to put forth your own message, right? This is my message. I want to put it out the way that I want it to be crafted and received. This is how I see it, kind of thing. So I also want to celebrate that as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So in your coaching, as you continue to coach more people, and I love, I forget where this is in your, you're talking about working with, you work with, really amazing people. You work with really strong, already successful executives and corporate people, but you also work with, artists and athletes and actors. I mean, it's really amazing what you're doing, Jaime. So what I love about that, and again, one of the things I wanted to celebrate you is you are uniquely qualified because of who you are as a human being and the way you've navigated your life, I think, to really help activate people writ large, right? That you're not your standard coach, Jaime. I know you know that. I just want to kind of elevate 10%. I'll get Jaime to work with me. No, she's not the right person for the job. She wants to take you to a whole other realm, up to the moon and back, right?
That's right.
And I love that, Jaime. I mean, go big or go home, right? I mean, this one precious life, we do not know when the exit ramp is coming. Yep.
That's right.
So I really, so in just a couple minutes here, just if you could share a little bit about, how it is that you work with people. And if you have an example of maybe somebody that you really seen transform, you don't need to say their identity, but just hear a little something about the transformation process.
Sure. And I love that you highlighted that I work with a very wide range of people, right? Because so many coaches are very niche focused. It's men this age or people in this age. And I've been really, really fortunate. And it's taken me a while to see the connection, right? It's not a demographic, it's like a psychographic, right? I've worked with professional athletes who are looking for, well, now what, right? I can't perform at the level and I have to find a new career. And this has been my identity, to C-suite executives that have it all, but they're not happy.
Right.
And so what's really interesting is people come to me because they know I can help them up level whatever that is they think that they want. But the beautiful part about coaching is no matter the package or the client that it's been, people will come for very tangible things. They want to jump right into that transformation, right? Triple my income, get me a new career path. What's my legacy? And yet when you strip away all the external things, the real work is the internal connection, right? And helping people quiet out the noise and learn to reconnect with that inner wisdom. And through that process, excavate those next deepest desires and even their dreams. And it still amazes me every single time that when a client gets that kind of clarity and that kind of internal intrinsic energy and excitement about those things in their life, how quickly the pieces then start to fall into place, right? I've seen a photographer who was literally going to walk away from her business after, I think she said 15 years, do some of this inner work, retune some of her packaging and figuring out exactly who she wants to serve and put the business infrastructure into place to go from 6 figures to 7 figures in a very short period of time.
So what the phrase that I like to use, Jaime, is why I love doing the work that I do to help to develop leaders, to help creating cultures where people actually come alive, is that in the process, I literally get to witness people's molecules change in front of my very eyes. It is profoundly beautiful. So I totally got what you were saying. So we did it already, Jaime. We managed to get through the show. It goes by so incredibly fast. This show is listened to by people around the world, and they really are out to create cultures where people actually want to come to work and do their best. They become those inspirational leaders that lead people to their greatness, and we do business that betters the world. What would you like to leave them with today?
So my invitation to you today, if you're listening, is to always remember and find your brave, to boldly be yourself, because the world is craving authenticity. Businesses need authentic leaders. And ultimately, you don't need permission to be who you already are. So have fun, be true to yourself, and always find your brave.
Thank you, Jaime. It is so delightful to know you and have you on the show and share with my listeners and viewers. I hope that ladies and gentlemen, that you are never the same because of this conversation with Jaime. Jaime, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. You're a wonderful host.
Thank you. Listeners and viewers, if you want to learn more about Jaime Konzelman, her memoir, her coaching work, just visit her personal website. It's jaimekonzelman.com. Let me spell that for you. Her name is Jaime, and then Konzelman is Konzelman, jaimekonzelman.com. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast. We were on the air with Robert Craig of Robert Craig Films, talking about the movies he makes to inspire and lift people through hopelessly challenging times to make their lives better. Very, very inspiring conversation. He was actually a very professional gutter salesman before he became a filmmaker. Really amazing. Next week, we'll be on the air with Scott Jeffrey Miller talking about his new book, Master Mentors, 30 Transformative Insights from Our Greatest Minds. See you there. Remember that work is an integral and important part of our lives and can be one of the best adventures and means of realizing our potential and making the impact we crave. So let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Alise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.